Hello and good morning everyone, and thank you for joining our VMware Cloud Foundation webinar today. So we're joined here by John Ryan from VMware, who will be going through the webinar with you. And then we also have Peter Ely from Bytes, who will be discussing some of the free assessments we're offering at the end of the webinar.
Okay, so good morning, everybody, and thank you to Amy and the team in Bytes for giving us the opportunity to present to you this morning. Hopefully everybody can see my screen okay now. But what we'd like to talk to you about this morning is really a really interesting new kind of set of technologies that we're bringing together to try and make people's lives a little bit easier when it comes to both owning, building and operating internal cloud services and evolving, I suppose, our IT infrastructure to stretch beyond the walls of our data center as well to a more cross-cloud or hybrid cloud type approach. So I'm going to probably talk for about 30 minutes or so before the Bytes team come back in and kind of flesh things out with some coverage on what type of assessments and what type of services we can layer on top of this. But this is really intended to give you guys an introduction to what VMware are doing in this whole modernization of data center technologies. So just to quickly recap for everybody on the VMware overall I suppose approach to building out IT services these days. It's really based on this idea that you're able to have a standardized platform sitting either in your own data center or in a public cloud provider that's giving you a common set of tools and a common set of I suppose infrastructure that you can automate and provide your IT services on top of. And this is what we call our cross-cloud services. And that cross-cloud architecture is then powering our ability to offer essentially any cloud, be that on-prem or off, and also then to deliver any application on top of that cloud, including getting control of applications that don't necessarily live in your data center, software as a service-based applications, and delivering those applications to any device that you wish to deliver it to, be that a mobile device, a desktop device, or even getting control of some of these new types of devices like Internet of Things devices that are out there at the minute. And a key principle of all of this is that we apply security all the way down through those techniques, methodologies and technologies all the way through. So what are we talking about today insofar as this whole picture? And it's really looking to get people started on this idea of transforming the way that they do things within IT. So we hear an awful lot about digital transformation within the industry. And if we look at even the most traditional companies, the likes of GE, General Electric, who make everything from, well, they used to make light bulbs all the way through to jet engines now. And their CEO and chairman, Jeff Immelt, has a really good quote around this. It's that, any organization today, be that an industrial company, a healthcare company, a public sector organization, could go to bed as that traditional company and wake up as a software company. And what he means by that is that effectively IT and software sits at the heart now of pretty much every organization out there. It powers the way that we go to market. It powers the way that our employees do their work. It powers the way that we consume and collect and analyze data to be able to improve our processes and deliver a better service or a better value product to our customers. And a big part of that digital transformation is the recognition that we do have to change some things. We need to really examine what we're doing today and try and figure out how we're going to do that tomorrow. And when it comes to VMware's view on this, we are of course looking at the IT side of things. And we are seeing a huge, I suppose, amount of commonality in the market, where we see that our customers are really all striving for very similar things, even though they're all, I suppose, in very diverse and distinct markets. And when we look at things like, for example, agility, faster response time to a manufacturer, that means that they can get a better throughput of product through their factory, and that they can, for example, respond to an issue or an outage much more quickly, which keeps their uptime going, makes sure that they're getting the maximum amount of productivity through their factory. For an app developer or an organization that's delivering a service, being able to turn around infrastructure and get it up and running as quickly as possible for our developers to create on top of it is a real competitive advantage for organizations. And every type of organization in between is trying to get to that level of agility. We're also looking at that application and that developer team being a key, I suppose, part of any new organization. Every new organization is looking at technology to try and drive additional business or improve process to allow an organization to just do better. Be that at business, be it that at service provision, be that whatever that organization is trying to do. And everybody's trying to do this, of course, with lower cost. I suppose everybody's budgets aren't exactly going through the roof. I think, at best, we probably have the same budget that we had last year. It all depends whether we're seen as an investment for the business, or whether we're seen as a cost for the business. And what we're starting to see is organizations are trying to transition from that cost center to being a business driver. And the way that you do that is that you ensure that you're able to show all of the good work that you're able to do and get that in front of the right people to be able to show that. So being able to see that productivity, see that efficiency, but also then show that through efficiencies you're driving in IT, you're able to lower your capital expenditure and your operational expenditure as well. And key to everybody we talk to, regardless of whether we're talking to them about our core vSphere product set that we've been selling for 15 years plus, or some variation of it anyway, or even some of our newest technologies around cloud native applications, around Internet of Things. Security is by far and away the biggest discussion. So being able to do everything we need to do at the speed we need to do it, at the cost we want to do it at, but doing all of that securely, it's not straightforward. And I guess when we look at that, the current set of IT solutions that we have at the moment, we have pluses and minuses on different technologies. So I think the two kind of predominant areas that our customers are looking at investing in are in their own data center or in public service providers, either full kind of managed service providers or absolutely pure public cloud pay-as-you-go type providers. And each of these have different pluses and minuses, as I said. The private data center is, it's trusted, it's proven. We normally have, built in an awful lot of performance and availability into those types of solutions. But that comes at a cost. There's often a lot of complexity there. There's often a lot of maintenance there. It can be quite resource intensive because we're having to maybe provision for our peak workloads versus kind of just having what we need when we need it. We also have to kind of build out that architecture in advance. You can't just ring up a storage vendor and say, I'd like to borrow a storage array for a week there because we have a big intensive job where I need to do some big data analysis. You need to make that investment up front, and that's the traditional model we've always had. But where that model is coming under pressure is that public cloud providers are giving us some of that flexibility that we want to deliver modern IT services. So things like, being able to get things on demand quite easily over the internet, that's what public cloud is all about. And only having to pay for what you use. Absolutely, that's what they're about. But there's also some challenges there too, insofar as, you start to build your applications on top of these public clouds using, native APIs. That those public clouds have that are proprietary to them, and you start to find that it's very difficult if you decide, what, I think I might move this application either back to my data center or to another cloud, and that can be quite sticky to get in there. You've also got the possibility that you can have people having to learn new tool sets, having to maintain visibility on different parts of different infrastructures, that we probably didn't have before. We have to have somebody keeping an eye on the instances that are running on Amazon. We might have another team looking after Azure. We might have different tool sets for monitoring all of those, and then it comes down to the costs, and cost is always a really interesting thing on public cloud, because absolutely, if you go dollar per gigabyte versus your data center, if you do that in a point in time, absolutely, cloud is going to be cheaper every time. But if we look at that over a 5-year period, the standard kind of purchase period for a storage array, and then we start to look at things like workload types and the amount of IOPS generated by a workload, the amount of storage that's generated by a workload, the amount of ingress and egress data coming out of that cloud. All of those are metered, all of those are charged, and our costs can actually start to rack up if we don't keep a close eye on them. So how do we solve that? So I guess from VMware's perspective, we're looking at this in a way to kind of say, all right, we have to start somewhere. And where we can start is on a really, really solid platform that we've built out, as I said, with our customers for the last 10 years or so around compute virtualization. So that was the first step that we took back then to kind of modernize the way that we did things in the data center. We didn't have to go out and buy servers for every new application and have every application living on its own server. We were able to now kind of consolidate a lot of work onto a smaller hardware footprint and get a lot more done. And what we're doing across the rest of the data center with our technologies like storage virtualization and network virtualization is to essentially apply the same principle, being able to take an awful lot of the control or the management of the individual kind of hardware components and move them up into a software layer where they can be controlled much more easily. We can change them based on policies and automation. And then we can layer on top of those very flexible resources that we have now in our data center, a layer of management and automation to give us full visibility on operational, I suppose, workloads, but also on cost, and also figure out a way that we can actually roll out our applications and services in a very controlled and standardized way, even giving our users self-service access if we so wish. And that's kind of what we're talking about on the private side of things, but then also taking those principles and integrating them with the best of public cloud. And this is kind of that end state that we're talking about around hybrid cloud, where we essentially have the best of both worlds. So to expand on that, that's a very easy thing for me to say around, just build one of these hybrid clouds. It's easy, right? But it's not, because essentially there's so many different considerations here. If we just take a quick look at your regular IT kind of news site, you're going to see topics on all of these various different, I suppose, categories on every page. You're talking about things like network virtualization, making that network more flexible and bringing a kind of a virtualization operational model to kind of your day-to-day networking tasks. Infrastructure as a service. Do we really want to do self-service? How do we build it? What tools do I need? What kind of things do I need to automate? How do I maintain a service when I've only ever kind of run a static kind of consumable IT organization? containers and containerized applications. What are they all about? Our developers keep on asking for them and want to use them flexibly, but how do I get control over them? How do I run those containers and those container workloads from an operational perspective, like I understand how to do with physical and virtualized workloads today? And then how do I use public clouds and new trends like hyper-converged infrastructure all in one thing? There's a lot going on. There's a lot of considerations there, and how do I choose the best of all these things, and how do I put it together? That's the real challenge here, because I can go off and I can pick different vendors, and I can try and piece things together, and I can end up with a usable service. But God, when it comes to doing upgrades, I'm going to be in big trouble, because how do I upgrade different components? How do I sequence that? What's the impact of changing this version of a network virtualization platform and this kind of container platform, and what's the impact? So that challenge, if we break it down to what it simply is that building the cloud is actually can be a bottleneck. So we all want what that cloud delivers. We can all see the benefits of having a much more flexible and better managed and kind of highly utilized private cloud, but then we can also see the benefits of being able to burst out into the public cloud or run specific workloads in the public cloud where it makes sense. And building that kind of architecture is really the challenge for most IT organizations. So that's a lot of preamble to kind of cover what we're talking about in Cloud Foundation. So what VMware's Cloud Foundation actually does is it actually takes all of those core elements that we need to be able to build out a modernized data center infrastructure around compute virtualization, storage virtualization, network virtualization, but also then considering how we manage those resources and how do we do specifically lifecycle management, patching, upgrading of that platform in a seamless way. And then having the right tools to work on top of that. And that's essentially what we're getting with our VMware Cloud Foundation. We're getting that platform that's going to service all of those application needs that we have, utilizing all of those really interesting and highly kind of, I suppose, on-topic technologies like network virtualization, hyper-converged infrastructure, but then being able to stretch that out beyond your data center as well to a public cloud provider who is running the exact same technology in their public cloud service and will sell that to you as a service. So that is key, having that common platform and a common set of rules across both areas, private and public cloud. But key is that light blue bar as well, that layer of management and automation that can stretch across both environments and give you the same tooling and the same operational model, regardless of where your workload actually lives. So, just a quick deeper dive into what we have inside in Cloud Foundation. So we have, of course, best of breed technologies like vSphere, our virtual SAN technology, which allows us to essentially take locally attached storage in our servers, pool it together and give us a flexible software-defined storage solution. And then our NSX technology, market leader in network virtualization, giving us huge opportunities around automation, security, and being able to stretch our data center beyond those four walls that we usually contain our localized network in, out into other data centers or even into the cloud, and all wrapped together in what we call SDDC Manager, which is essentially a fully automated lifecycle management tool for all of those technologies. So all the patch management, all of the upgrading is handled on an automated basis. And this is available in your own data center, or you can have it as a service from our technology partners. Some of the big ones you saw there on the last slide were IBM, and forthcoming is the Amazon Web Services version. But also we have lots of different vCloud Air network service providers who are going to be able to deliver that offering as well for you. And really what it's all about is trying to take all the technologies and the approaches that we need to run a fully modernized data center infrastructure to support cloud workloads or applications, but being able to have a kind of common set of approaches, whether that's actually in your data center or elsewhere. And that essentially allows you to build your application wherever you want, at whatever kind of cost model or whatever operational model you want, and then have the flexibility to bring that application wherever you need to. And when we look at total cost of ownership versus buying and operating these technologies individually, what we're talking about here is just because simply through the ease of management, we can actually have a better total cost of ownership here. So the way we usually explain this to our traditional customers is that this is the equivalent of what we've done with server virtualization, except instead of now just virtualizing an application and operating system in a VM, we're virtualizing a data center inside in our integrated software-defined data center platform in VMware Cloud Foundation. If I wanted to simplify it down to its bare bones, that's what it is. And again, each of these technologies that's powering the Cloud Foundation are leading in their classes. They're evolving rapidly because all of the innovation is happening in software. We're seeing new releases, new features, enhancements on a regular basis, much more frequently than we would have seen in kind of traditional hardware-based models. So, why is this a benefit? Well, if we look at the way that these mega clouds, these public cloud providers build things, they don't just kind of come along and just build whatever takes their fancy on any given day. They've highly standardized, highly validated designs that are used, that are repeatable, scalable, and you know exactly what you're going to get when you roll it out. This is what we're getting for your data center with Cloud Foundation. It also then gives you full compatibility with all of the other VMware technologies that we have out there, from management technologies to availability technologies to our end user computing stack to all of our cloud native technologies that can live on top of that VMware based platform. It also gives us the opportunity to consider new hardware innovation that's happening. So, hyper-converged infrastructure and architectures are, they're very, I suppose, top of mind for people who are coming into server and storage refreshes. Should I be looking at this new server type that's going to give me an extra layer of storage in my data center? Or can I actually use this new storage platform to actually replace existing technologies that we have in our data center that are more monolithic, that potentially are much more static in the way that they're configured, require much more I suppose operation and much more time to kind of to manage and own, and require very specialized skill sets. And this approach gives us kind of a building or a Lego block type approach to scaling out infrastructure. And then I guess, with Cloud Foundation, particularly, from a VMware perspective, it is that single software stack. So everything is pre-validated, it works together in a bundle that's going to be managed by a dedicated kind of lifecycle manager. And that again is going to give you a level of reliability and consistency and performance that you might not get if you're trying to kind of mix and match different technologies to get this. So just to quickly touch on the Lifecycle Manager, or the SDDC Manager, and essentially what it's going to take care of is everything from the initial deployment of the Cloud Foundation on top of your preferred hardware or on your validated stack that you might buy kind of in an appliance type approach. It's going to allow you to do high level configuration and slice up that cloud platform as you see fit. It's also going to give you a lot of control over how those resources are used and assigned to different individual virtual machines or to applications within that environment. And then when it comes to lifecycle management around patching and upgrades, it's a centralized place for us to apply all the pre-validated patches and upgrades that we need across all the different technologies that form part of Cloud Foundation. So again, it's trying to make this idea of running a cloud infrastructure really, really simple versus, having to plan for 2 months in advance as to how we're going to upgrade all these various different bits and pieces, and then having some sort of insane maintenance window to take our services offline and get everything up and running. So the idea here is to try and make it simple. So, it's all well and good me talking about, how good it is, but we do have some practical examples here. So even if I look internally at VMware, we use Cloud Foundation to power our One Cloud, which is our internal IT services cloud. And we have obviously an awful lot of data on this kind of cloud and all the various different steps that used to be involved in running this One Cloud system prior to Cloud Foundation. So, we know what we're doing when we're talking about running and operating and building clouds in VMware. And even at that, when we considered a new, I suppose, node or a new kind of, I suppose, how will I put it, a new kind of application or a new site or a new data center for One Cloud, we were talking minimum 86 days. Okay, and we tune that to the max. Okay, but when you look at Cloud Foundation, we can reduce that down to 4.5 days from when we actually start the project, because everything's pre-validated. All the installation is automated. All of the configuration, once we have compatible hardware in place for the network, we can actually configure the switch itself to be ready for Cloud Foundation. We can also do storage configuration, automation configuration, all of that automation and environment validation 4.5 days. So this has significantly impacted VMware's own ability to stand up internal services and has really, really kind of given us that kind of accelerated platform for lots of different kinds of innovation that we're working on in newer technology. So, what does this look like? Well, it's a very standardized approach. It's x86 servers. It's a couple of top of rack switches. We do have some predefined architectures, but again, it's not going to be anything that's requiring kind of very, very specific standalone kind of proprietary vendors that have all sorts of proprietary licensing models for different kind of software features. You're also then talking about a standardized management tool that's going to sit across all of that capacity and manage how we actually deploy the infrastructure, making it a single pool of managed resources. And then you're saying, well, that's great, John, but like I've got lots of different things that I want to run on top of my virtualized infrastructure. It's not just one environment. So we have that concept of workload domains, which will allow us to carve out sections of this environment and allocate them to specific workloads. So if we want to run virtual desktop infrastructure using VMware's Horizon family of products or Workspace ONE, we can carve out a workload domain, isolate those resources, have its own vCenter from a separation of duties perspective and resource management perspective, and run that on top of our Cloud Foundation, still having lifecycle management and control of those resources with the SDDC manager sitting above them. So again, we're really looking at how we make that standardized platform in your environment really work for you guys. So, this is an evolution. I think, what we see is that, we obviously have a huge amount of interest and uptake of our virtual SAN technology, which is just absolutely going gangbusters. It's over 7,000 customers now globally. 83% of those are using it for business critical applications. And it's on its 6th generation of technology now in 3 years. So a hugely accelerated development cycle there. But this is another step on top of that, where we're moving from just kind of that combined hyper-converged building block to much more of a cloud infrastructure in a box that we want to actually be able to use. And then making the most of that cloud foundation really requires you to consider, how do I manage it? What do I put on top of that cloud foundation to really make it work? And that's really the vRealize suite of products that go from operational excellence all the way through to automation and cross-cloud services. So, you know, when it comes to what we really care about, it's going to be a case of being able to use the right infrastructure at the right time in the right place with, again, as I said, that standardized infrastructure, cloud foundation in your own environment owned by you, or a cloud foundation in a public service provider operated by a third party, and also having interoperability maybe with other services that cloud provider provides, bringing your workload closer to that public cloud service without having to undertake a huge application transformation project or re-engineering of that project to get there. And what that looks like is very similar to what it looks like today in your data center. So if you plug in a cloud foundation instance, whether it's an on-premises piece of infrastructure or a cloud-based version of cloud foundation, guess what? It shows up as a vCenter. And you can manage that vCenter in the same way that you manage every other vCenter that you have. And you can manage it all from the same client that you're used to managing it from. So again, the whole idea here is that we make it super simple to build the cloud, we make it super simple to operate the cloud, and we make it super simple to integrate with all of the various different technologies and, I suppose, operational models that you've already built around a VMware environment. So that cloud foundation is not just powering traditional applications as we see them. We are seeing people adopt this for everything, as I said, from end user computing and virtual desktop infrastructure to development environments based on OpenStack to fully integrated container based environments for developers as well. And what are people building out on this? Well, it's pretty much everything. We have everything from your test and dev, very kind of low maintenance, low kind of importance applications, all the way through to telecoms providers using this platform to power mission critical services at very low latencies for their telecoms networks, and everything in between. So it really does become that common software platform that allows you to stop worrying about building a cloud and maintaining a cloud and start actually using the IT services that you're investing in. So just a few other quick points before I finish up. These are just kind of some key takeaways here in relation to Cloud Foundation. So what does it do? It makes private cloud easy. It makes hybrid cloud easy. It makes application portability and application kind of platforms very standardized and gives you the flexibility to essentially concentrate on what's actually going into that application and how that application is going to change your business and drive more business for you. And from a total cost of ownership perspective, we're seeing actually that people are actually able to run their existing data centers that were already virtualized with VMware technology at a lower total cost of ownership because of the fact that we have this integrated lifecycle management capability and all of the other efficiencies that things like virtual SAN and NSX bring to the table as well. So how do we get our hands on it? Well, we've a couple of different models. As always, VMware likes to give lots of different options, and the guys in Bytes will really be able to give you a really good steer on what the right model for you is. But we have everything from building from very low end kind of setups where we take vSAN ready nodes, which are pre-configured hardware servers that are have all of the disks required for the storage element and have the right networking capacity for the network element, and that can be married with qualified networking kit from Cisco and Arista. So that's if you want to kind of build it yourself. We also have integrated systems from people like Fujitsu or Dell. If you just want to basically buy a rack that has everything in it, all of the hardware, all of the software, just roll it into the data center, turn it on, and away you go. That's another option. And then, of course, get it as a service from a number of different cloud vendors that are out there. And this list is growing all the time. So, some of the marquee global partners are IBM. We have our vCloud Air that's now powered by OVH. And we have all of our vCloud Air network partners across the world that are buying into this technology and starting to migrate their existing VMware-based clouds onto this standardized platform. And of course, Amazon Web Services with our VMware Cloud on AWS going to be coming on stream in America and in EMEA in the coming months. So lots of different options of how to get things here. But there's probably a little bit more we need to do around kind of investigation. So I wanted to make sure that you guys had these resources available to you. So first and foremost, we have our hands-on labs, which are a really good way to kind of get stuck into the technology, to be able to get hands-on and see how does it actually work? How does the SDDC manager change things up? You can have a little bit of a play around with vSAN and NSX and see how they work. We also have the capability to do some remote proofs of concept, and we'll work with Bytes to be able to deliver that for you. And that can just be a case of actually just seeing how it might work with your workloads on it. We have customers shipping in kind of packaged virtual machines or replicating some virtual machines into a remote proof of concept site, and we can kind of see the performance of those virtual machines. And then we have solution centers as well, where we have various different partners who have stood up Cloud Foundation based labs, and you can go in and you can do various different engagements with them to be able to do that. And of course, your Bytes account manager will be able to provide you with more information on this. There's lots of different webinars and events coming up to kind of give more of a deep dive into the various different technologies that go in to the Cloud Foundation and power the Cloud Foundation and the whole solution architecture. And specifically VDI is becoming really, really popular with a lot of our customers, because this gives a very predictable and scalable platform for virtual desktop infrastructure, and that gives you a consistent performance and consistent user experience, which is the key metric on VDI. And the guys in Bytes will also be able to look at things like business analysis, look and see where this might actually fit within your business and have that discussion. So keep an eye out for their events. There's also a few other resources around kind of Twitter and blogs and things, which I'll include in the show notes. But at this point, I will hand back over to Amy and the team to take us through some of the Bytes services around assessments and what we can do on Cloud Foundation. So thank you very much for listening to me. Amy, over to you.
Okay, thank you, John. It's not actually Amy, it's Pete Ely here. I just wanted to thank you, John, and VMware for taking us through that Cloud Foundation demonstration. What we're really hoping you might be able to get from that is to see how VMware really are trying to help customers modernize their data center, and we're seeing evidence of how they're meeting those challenges that we were speaking about, bringing those technologies together individually. Just want to talk briefly through some of the offerings that Bytes can bring as well to help you on this roadmap. Obviously, some of you probably have been working with Bytes in the past and aware of some of the color offerings we have here, but in particular just want to concentrate on one particular area that this can help, which is virtualization assessment. So this particular area that John kind of just touched on at the end there was about analyzing your data center and really looking at what you are actually doing at the moment in terms of workloads, in terms of your usage, and really assessing and bringing all that data together to be able to make a real comparison as to how things would look if you were to consider using hybrid cloud or to move your workloads into the cloud. If we think about the main topics that we perhaps want to raise from that presentation we've just had, is your infrastructure cloud ready? Our assessments are completely agnostic, so we can have a look at whether you're running anything on your VMware hypervisors as well as any other hypervisors. And indeed, if you are running anything in the cloud at present, we're also able to do assessments based on all of that metric data. We can bring it together, look at all of your network traffic patterns, identify security risks. And if you have any of those concerns around security, or you're looking at DR, or you're just looking at the innovation model, you want to modernize the way you automate things and do things, we can really spec up whether your infrastructure is ready for that journey. If you're looking to just migrate workloads to the cloud, and you're looking at microsegmentation, we had you notice from the Cloud Foundation piece that the individual technologies that are being brought together, vSAN, vSphere, and NSX, are really individual technology components that you can implement piece by piece in your infrastructure. So if you're looking at microsegmentation and you want to see how to do that, you want to compare the costs, we can show you assessment metrics based on our assessments that we do. And that's, as I said before, it's not specific as to what hypervisor you're using, whether you're running physical workloads or a number of different hypervisors. We can show what optimizations can be made and how you can manage that private infrastructure better, and indeed make your roadmap clearer for your journey to the cloud. So I hope that's been helpful. If you do have any questions, we're going to just run a Q&A. I'm going to pass back to Amy.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Peter. So yeah, as mentioned at the beginning, if you do have any questions, there is a questions box just at the right-hand side of your screen. If you type them in there, I'll read them out for John and Peter to answer for you. And also, if you would prefer to submit any of them outside of the webinar today, there's an email address just on your screen. So tellmemore@bytes.co.uk, and we can forward that on to one of our specialists. Okay, so we have a question here that says, if I want those components, do I have to have Cloud Foundation?
So I can answer that one, Peter, if you wish. So all of the components around vSphere, vSAN, NSX are all available as standalone products as well. We have, I suppose, a large variety of customers at different stages of their readiness to kind of adopt this kind of idea of a standardized platform. So we do see people kind of maybe taking some step-by-step approaches over time to move towards Cloud Foundation. The good thing is that if you do take those steps in any kind of those individual areas, be it, as I said, with virtual SAN, NSX, even with some of the management products around operations management or around some of the automation tools, you can basically roll those into Cloud Foundation over time as well. So, for example, if you decide, right, my project for this year is going to be examining my storage and modernizing my storage, you can go down the route of hyperconverged infrastructure with some virtual SAN on top, and then maybe, you know, in a year's time, you're saying, okay, that's worked great. Let's look at the network, or you know, I'd have a parallel project on looking at network efficiencies, or maybe even security, which is a huge concern for people. And you can basically go down the route of implementing that NSX separately if you wish. And then over time, it might make an awful lot more sense for you to be able to combine that together and manage it all together under one kind of SDDC manager. So the SDDC manager itself isn't available as a standalone product, but you know, those other components are.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, John. So it looks like that's the only question we have had today. So thank you everyone for joining and taking the time out of your day to join the webinar today, and thank you so much, John, for presenting as well. As mentioned previously, if you would like to have any more information, or if you're interested in any of the assessments that Peter mentioned, there is an email address there. Do get in touch, and one of our specialists will be in touch with you. Okay, thanks everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.